Good evening. It is August 9th, 2026. I want to talk about going back to school. For anyone who's going back to school, please respect your teachers. Respect your teachers. I don't care if you don't like your teacher. I don't care if you disagree with your teacher. I don't care if you're having a bad day. I don't care what it is. You be respectful to your teachers and to those in authority over you. And parents, for the parents out there, this is really something that bothers me. You are a parent, and you need to hold your kids accountable for their actions. And you need to train your kids to be responsible and to follow commandments and follow orders and be a productive, civilized member of society. I have had enough of watching this gentle parenting generation. I'm not saying be mean to your kids. I'm not saying be nasty to your kids. But I am saying be firm and hold them accountable and follow through. And let there be consequences for bad behavior. This gentle parenting has gotten us nowhere in society but given us a bunch of spoiled brats. That's all it's done. And the teachers are having to deal with the mess because you won't step in. And then anytime the teacher says anything, you the parent get upset and all bent out of shape because you think, well, little Johnny, he just doesn't listen, so if he doesn't want to listen, he's not going to listen. I'm sorry, excuse me? Since when did it become acceptable for a child to just decide, well, I'm just not going to listen? They're a child. Of course they're going to act up. Of course they're not going to want to listen. But that doesn't mean that it's okay. These teachers have put in so much time and effort into preparing for the school year and preparing lessons for the day. The least you can do as a student is be respectful and treat your teacher well. Regardless of whether you like them or not, regardless of whether you think they're fair or not, you be respectful. That's just all there is to it. Now, I have personal experience with school. I was homeschooled most of my life, but I was in public school for first grade, and it was a disaster. My teacher was not willing to work with me. She was not really understanding of my issues. I have a lot of challenges with learning disabilities and stuff like that. And that's the other argument that I hear all the time. It's like, well, what if the kid has learning disabilities? I understand that, okay? I totally understand that. But that's still not an excuse to be disrespectful to a teacher. there's a fine line between having a learning disability and having a hard time and not being able to respond to certain things well, and just flat out ignorance and defiance. There is a huge difference there. So, and I am speaking from experience as a special needs child when I was growing up. You know, I've had disabilities my entire life. Everything has been harder for me. Everything has been more frustrating for me. I understand that. But I guarantee you probably a good 70 to 80% of the kids in school these days are not special needs. And I don't mean that to sound cold or whatever, but, you know, if they have a legitimate disability or some kind of, you know, developmental or, you know, cognitive issues, that is fine. If it is absolutely clear, absolutely documented and stuff, I am all in support of that. Please hear me out. I am not in any way talking about those kinds of people. But what I am talking about is the people who, the kids and the parents who don't deal with that, and they just give excuses like, well, that's just the way it is, you know? It's like, no. You need to do what you can to improve the situation, you know? And I'm talking to those who do not have a documented disability, you know? Now, if there's true disabilities going on, like I said, that is a different story. And I understand that. I was in that situation. I needed accommodations. I needed things to be done differently. Okay? And I am all for that. And to be honest, I think teachers need to be more adaptive to that and understanding of that as well. And I understand that teachers are under a lot of pressure. I understand that teachers have a lot on their plate that they have to do. But, you know, but you can't just, you know, say like, oh, well, you know, what if there's special needs involved? Because, you know, to me, that's just kind of a cop-out and an excuse for bad behavior, you know? Now, like I said, to be very clear, I must make myself clear. There are situations where there is true disabilities going on, and there are true issues. I understand. You know, that is a different story. But you can't tell me that every kid who acts up in school and is disrespectful to their teachers, disrespectful to other adults, you cannot tell me that every single one of those kids are special needs in a regular public school. You cannot tell me that is the situation, because it's not. So parents, hold your kids accountable, because it is not doing them any favors by being a gentle parent and not setting boundaries and not being firm with direction, because once they become adults, they're going to be a mess in society. We're already seeing that. We're already seeing young adults who are acting like children. We're seeing it in the workforce. We're seeing it everywhere. And if we don't nip this in the bud, it's only going to get worse. And not only that, but these teachers do not need to deal with your crazy child acting like a fool all the time. They already have a very full plate, and they already have a very high responsibility. Your child's teacher is not their babysitter. Your child's teacher is not their parent. You are their parent. And you need to teach them responsibility. You need to teach them values. You need to teach them your family values and your rules in your house. And those rules need to apply both at home and at school. And if they break those rules, you need to follow through with consequences and discipline, however you want to handle that. But these kids are not going to be successful when they become adults if you just allow them to do whatever they want and you excuse their behavior. These parents who just let their kids do whatever they want, no holds barred, no consequences, I don't understand that. I really don't. Because you are setting your child up for failure in the future. How is that going to go over with a boss if they can't behave themselves and they can't follow a boss's instructions? They're not going to be able to hold a job, and their life is going to be a mess. You know, because I always hear the excuse of like, oh, well, they're just kids. No, they're kids that are going to become adults. It's much easier to train a child in earlier years and tell them, no, that's not acceptable, than it is to try and train a teenager or an adult. Because if you start early on and set expectations and boundaries, they're going to learn real quick that, no, we must not do that. Or there will be consequences. And those consequences need to be followed through every single time. You know? Because they need to know that their actions are not acceptable. And this is an unpopular opinion, but I think teachers should be allowed to discipline. I'm not saying that they should take matters into their own hands as far as how to raise a child at all, because they're not the parent. But teachers do need to have systems in place to discipline and nip bad behavior in the bud, because they shouldn't have to put up with your child's craziness and stupidity. They shouldn't have to put up with that. And the entitlement that I see from a lot of parents and a lot of kids is ridiculous. Your child is no more special or important than anybody else. Everybody needs to be respectful and be attentive to their teachers and those in authority over them. There's no exception to that rule. There's no exception to that rule. You know, now, like I said, I understand there's true special needs, there's true disabilities, there's true things that make it harder for a child to understand those things. I get that. But like I said, that is not everybody. There's no way it's every child. It just cannot happen. I mean, and so what it boils down to is just common sense. Common sense and just morals and values. You know, and it's not wrong to punish a child. It is not wrong to correct. And as a Christian, I believe the Bible and what it says, and the Bible says to correct your children and to raise them in a way that is honoring to God. And I also believe what it says about children: honor your father and your mother, and respect those in authority over you. I stand on those values. So parents and any students that might be watching, if you think that acting up is okay, and you think that being disrespectful to a teacher is okay, let me tell you, you're going to be in for a rude awakening real soon. Because when you get into the workforce and you work a job, that's not going to fly. Being nasty, cussing out your boss, being a jerk, being entitled, not being responsible, you don't get any chances for that. So, the moral of this whole video is respect your teachers and respect your parents. And parents, respect the teachers as well. Now, again, I'm not saying every teacher is perfect. I know there are teachers that are not listening to what you need, or things like that. I know that, and I understand that. I have personally been in that situation. But that still does not give anyone the right to be disrespectful to a teacher. And you don't have to like them, you don't have to agree with them, you don't have to like what's going on. But do be respectful. these teachers put a lot of hard work into preparing to do their job to teach your kids and I have family members who either are teachers or were teachers for decades. And let me tell you, some of the stories I've heard of what they have to deal with is absolutely uncalled for. I understand there's going to be behavior issues. I mean, kids are just that way. But that shouldn't be an excuse for the behavior. You know? Because I always hear that excuse, well, they're just kids. No. They are kids that are going to be adults. And as an adult, you're not going to get away with that. You're going to get in trouble with your boss. You're going to get fired. And if it's really bad, you're going to get arrested. So, anyway, those are just my thoughts. I hope you learned something from this video. And I hope everyone has a great school year. And, yeah, and teachers, this one's for you. Thank you for the dedication and the hard work that you put into preparing to educate these kids. Thank you for taking on a task that I can't even imagine. Dealing with kids, dealing with a lot of chaos, and dealing with constantly trying to keep track of everything. That's a major job. So thank you for what you do. But also to the teachers, you know, please just be mindful of students that may have certain challenges with learning. I'm not saying you have to know everything. I don't expect that, because I know your job is really a difficult job. But if you could try to not just shut down a student who's struggling and try to find solutions. Even if that means you have to contact a parent to try and figure stuff out, or contact, you know, somebody else in the school to kind of help. But please don't just mow over them, because that's not fair to them either. But yeah, but other than that, I mean, I support you teachers, and I appreciate everything you do. So anyway, thank you so much for watching. Have a great day.